What's up, guys? Today we're back working on the STI swap GC8 behind me. So we got it working last time. Check out the video if you haven't seen it. We did some pretty cool donuts. But today we need to finish the wiring. We took everything from the STI. None of the lights, none of the door, no connector plugs right in. So everything needs to be repinned and adapted. So this is what's going to be done today. And yeah, hope everything goes well. Check it out. So starting off with a quick overview of what the wiring looks like right now. We have all the main components and the important bits that are plugged in, and we know those work. But the small stuff like the doors and stuff like this, which I've just done temporarily for the test drive, all of that needs to be fixed and rewired. Also, the door cards are not the right ones. The right ones are over there in that car. So that needs to be swapped, and none of the controls work, of course, because it's not plugged in. Same thing in the back. We have those connectors, and then the airbag system, which needs to be terminated. And then lastly, we got the trunk. This is just the loom from the STI, and nothing plugs in. All the GC connectors are different. So again, all of that needs to be repinned or resoldered, depending. But yeah, that's the plan today. And I'm going to start with the doors, because that might be the more tricky part. I'm going to remove the door cards first, grab the other ones, and see how the wiring matches up, and go from there. I started messing with the wiring, got the loom out of the STI door. It's this one, and then that's the GC one. So some plugs are the same, like the motor, those are easy, but then the lock is different. And of course the mirrors and all that stuff are different. So I'm gonna start, I guess, putting the new connectors on the STI wiring. And also I've noticed that the motor wires are actually flipped compared to the STI. It's the same plug, same connector, but the wires are exactly flipped. So if I want the window to go down, when I press the down button, I have to cut those and resolder them the other way, or repin them if I can get them out. Not sure yet, but yeah. So let's do that. Okay, so I'm done repinning this guy, and then I soldered this thing on for the lock. So now I'm gonna put it back in the door and test it on the car. And back inside the car, I have my wiring plugged in here. Everything's going to the controls, and just the motor and the lock are plugged in onto the door. So yeah, let's go and try this. So first, let's do the window. Nice. And then let's try the lock. That doesn't work. Okay, yeah, so the lock doesn't work. It kind of ticks behind the dashboard, but nothing happens on the door. So I'm assuming the wires are just flipped. So I'll switch those and see if it works. Before I flip the wires though, I'm gonna check with the multimeter to see if I'm getting power. And if I am, then it's probably just the wires. If I'm not, then yeah, I'll just keep looking. So I just spent a couple hours messing with this, and I finally found what the issue was. So this is the actuator from, or the lock from the GC, and that's from the STI. And yeah, this one's actually just a potentiometer. This one's an actuator. So even though they both have just two leads in and out, this one actually moves the lock, whereas this one just measures its position. So it made sense that when I plugged this in, nothing happened. And I actually shorted a fuse, because depending on the position of the potentiometer here, you'll either get a short or an open circuit. And whenever this was, I think, locked, I had a short, so I blew out my 15 amp fuse under the dash. So yeah, That's what happened, and now I know I have an actuator in this car, but they have like 4 or 5 wires going in and out. So yeah, I'll see if I can use this guy, and if not, start messing with this one. So I finally got my actuator to work. This thing has 4 wires, but you only need 2 of them. The other 2 are probably position, but I don't need them. So yeah, I tapped into the STI harness here with my red and greenish wires. And so now everything's plugged in, and when I flip the switch, boom, this thing locks. So yeah, that's awesome. Now it works. I can put it back in the door. My mistake was I thought this thing had an actuator in it, but it only had a potentiometer. So of course nothing's gonna happen if you plug power to it, and that's why I blew the fuse. But in the end, once I figured that out, everything else was easy. I just checked out the wiring diagram, and yeah, it all plugged right in. So all that's left now is to resolder the GC8 plug onto the STI harness and to put everything back in the door. There's everything back in the car. I got my lock there. The white tape here is where I soldered, so that's all cleaned up now. And let's try it. So that's unlocked and then locked. Perfect. And the window should still work. Down, up. Perfect. Pretty happy with the way it's turning out. Everything's working so far, and I only blew 1 fuse, so that's a good sign. And yeah, mirrors are still not working, but that's not a big issue for me. Now I just want to get this done on all 4 doors, and that's it. So let's do it. I just finished plugging in the STI harness, and let's go for a first test. That's my STI controller, and window down. It's actually, oh, okay, that's flipped too. Just like on the other side, I had to repin this connection for the motor. And now for the lock, I have to go on the other side. And now for the lock, let's see if that works. So lock, open, yep. Not sure if you can see it move, but it does move. So yeah, that's great. Last thing I need to do on the doors is the mirrors. This thing has 3 pins. It's got 1 common ground and then 1 left, right, and 1 up, down. Whereas the STI has 5. It's got some heated mirrors, which the GC8 don't. So I can disregard these 2 extra wires, and then I guess just splice the correct wires to fit this. Looking at the STI wiring diagram, I've got my heater on the first 2 cables on the right, and then I've got the 3 on the left, which are common ground, up, down, and left, right. So I just have to match those up with the ones in the car, and I should be all good. Redid my wiring the proper way with solder and shrink tubing, and now, let's see, down, up, right, left, it all works perfectly. So now I just got to redo this for the other side, and then the doors are done. Basically we need to do the same thing as in the front, but in the rear doors, which means that I need to remove these doors, that wiring harness, and put it all into here. These doors are pretty beaten up. They have a bunch of holes here, big one here, and scratches everywhere. So I don't know if I'll be keeping them. And I also realized they don't have speakers in the back, which kind of sucks. So I'm definitely going to be putting some right here. I've got my 2 harnesses out. The right one's STI, left one is GC8. And this time it's a little bit different because I'm reusing the GC8 controls. So I need to splice this guy and put the right connector on it. Same with the lock, and probably the windows. I need to swap the leads like in the front. But otherwise it should all fit quite nicely. Looking at the grommets, it seems like the STI one is exactly flipped compared to the GC8. This one has a smaller diameter here and a bigger one here, and this one's the opposite. It's big here and small here. So if I can, I'm gonna try and remove this, flip it, put it back on. We'll see if that's possible or not. So I've just found a pretty neat solution for the window control problem on the rear doors. I've taken apart my STI switches here and my GC8 switch here, and I took everything apart down to the switches themselves, and it turns out that even though the buttons are different, the switches are really, really similar. They're not exactly the same because the plugs are different, but the way they function and everything, the attachment points, they're all the same, which means that you can take the STI switch, which is this one, and plug it right into the GC8 control and mount it back in the car just as OEM, except with a new plug. And just like that, I've got the STI switch onto the GC8 trim, and it all plugs right into the STI harness. Where does it go? There we go. And that's all good to go now. Now I've got the GC8 control with the STI harness, flipped the boot, I've resoldered the new connector for the lock, and I actually flipped those twice because I flipped them and I didn't have to, so I reflipped them. But now it's all good, and I've got my speaker wires here, which is awesome. Now I can put speakers in the back. So that's all done, ready to be installed. The next thing are the headlights. This is the STI connector. It's got one plug for the height adjustment actuator, one for all the lights, high beam, low beam, the blinker, all that stuff, and one for the fog lights. And there is one more side blinker over there, but that should be easy. Looking at the GC8, we have one big plug for the light, one for the actuator, and then we've got one for the fog light down here and one for the blinker. And then of course there's another side blinker over there. But yeah, so quite a different setup. So looking at the wiring diagram from the 2006 STI, this connector has pins that are paired vertically for each light. So the first two on the left are high beam, then low beam, then position light, and on the right is blinker. So that's easy enough. And I'm not going to mess with the leveler just yet because I don't even have a switch inside the car. My STI came with no switch at all. So for now, I'm just going to leave it like this. Now looking at the GC8 wiring, there are 3 wires. The left one is low beam, middle is ground, and right is high beam. So all I need to do is connect this to the STI harness. Okay, so I've soldered my 3 wires onto the GC8 connector, plugged it into the headlights, and now it should be ready for a first test. So I'm just going to put it there and turn it on from inside the car. That was great. Now onto the fog lights and the blinkers. Okay, so I got all my lights plugged in the front. So both headlights, the corner lights, the blinkers, and even the fog lights down there. So now I can go inside the car and check that everything works the way it's supposed to. Let's turn the key on. It's doing its thing. And now let's try what's that, the running lights. So as you can see, both work. Now the headlights, high beams, and then let's do the fog lights down there. Boom. From the front, that's how it looks like. Those are the high beams right now. I'm gonna set the camera down and do a little test. That's awesome, all the lights work perfectly, just like OEM. So now what's left are the side markers on the fenders, the tail lights, license plate lights, and the lights inside the cabin, which should be pretty straightforward compared to that. So yeah, let's knock it out real quick. The side blinkers are actually the same plug on the STI as on the GC8, so that's perfect. Now we can move on to the back. I've just finished soldering everything nicely, it's all cleaned up, and now let's go ahead and test this. If I've done everything correctly, the brake light should light on. For the license plate lights, all I need to do is combine these 2 connectors here and make them go to this one. And there it is, all wired up, so let's go ahead and test this. So that concludes the entire wiring harness in the back of the car. So now it's time to go inside and finish up everything that hasn't been touched yet, aka the entire roof panel. So I got all of the panels and everything out of the way, but it made me realize that if I want to remove the sunroof, I have to somehow open it, and you can only do that with power. So I got my switch here and I'm going to try and apply some power to it. get the thing just open enough so I can access the bolts, and then take it out. Here's what I did to open the sunroof. So I ran some wires from the battery down in here, and then I put a spare connector that I had laying around into the motor, got my 2 leads, and depending on how you apply the power, it goes one way or the other. So that's really simple, and it worked. The sunroof is out. It's heavier than it looks, so it was kind of a struggle, but I got it. Now there's a big hole, and from the inside, there's not much left, just some wiring and stuff. But yeah, looks pretty clean. And I've got my new roof skin sitting on this car. So as soon as I get this one out, I can try test fitting this. Also, if you can see, there is a support here running along, so I'm gonna have to salvage that and put a second one over here instead of the sunroof. So I might grab the one from this car outside, but or try and find another one somehow. But yeah, it's gonna need it. So honestly, I thought there would be a lot more wires in the roof. This is just a power and ground in the back, and that's it. So since my wires run down here and then behind the dash, I would have to remove the dash to access those, and I don't want to remove the dash right now. So I think that's going to be it for the roof. I'm just going to leave it like this until the roof skin comes out, which means that there isn't much left to do. In fact, all I can think of right now are the windshield wipers, but I'm sure there's going to be other stuff, and we'll deal with those in time. But for now, it means we pretty much have all the wiring sorted. Alright guys, that's going to be it for this episode. We got a lot done. We got all the wiring sorted, the headlights, taillights, some of the inside. It's all good to go now, which means the next step can be mechanical again. In fact, I've just received an update from ABW. They'll be sending out my wide body kit tomorrow, so I should have it by the end of the week, and we can finally start working on that wide body. Until then, as always, if you liked the video, give it a like, subscribe, check out our Instagram. All the support is appreciated, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.